Greetings from Aalborg, Denmark. I'm El Jefe. It's been a while since my last interview due to the pandemic, but today I'm excited to be in Audio Group Denmark. And today I have with me Michael Borresen. Is that correct, the way I pronounce
Yeah,
it?
I think it's as good as it gets from a foreign tongue.
Oh, there you go. Okay. First of all, thank you for having me here to visit Audio Group Denmark. And also thank you to the Malaysia distributor, Audio Perfectionist, to make this happen. It is my first international trip after 2.5 years of pandemic. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to meet people in Audio Group Denmark. Okay, Michael, before we get into your design and so on, how and why did you join the hi-fi industry?
Uh, it's really a long story.
Yes, but
Yeah, um, I grew up sort of like with a family that told me if you want something, you have to do it. So already as a kid, I was creating things for myself, whether it's being a fishing rod or something for my sport or something. So I had this entrepreneur built into me. And speakers came into my life at a quite early age by accident or by, I don't know, a fire really started it. Because at one point there was a fire in the Scanspeak factory where my father and a colleague of his from the insurance company bought all the driver units that were not affected by the fire. So when I grew up, I had a big cabinet full of speaker drivers. So already in normal school age, I was building speakers, or at least I was building something that resembled speakers because I have access to a workshop. I could do cabinets and stuff like that. And then I mounted drivers from the Scanspeak and created crossovers and sort of learned how things were functioning from that practical side of things.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So it all started long time ago and by accident, like you said. Okay, but why it's only speakers? Why is your focus on speakers?
I don't think my focus is on speakers, but my name has become familiar with speakers. I'm an engineer and I have an engineering background, so I have this ability to look into things from a low level. And when in university, I had also a year where I worked with electronics. So I'm not only a speaker guy per se. I have a broader range of engineering tools than that. Um, but I think that this curiosity of knowing or wanting to know how things work at a lower level is really fundamental to work in this business or to work in any business really.
Okay, all right. Now, I had the opportunity to listen to your speakers back in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And to be frank, after listening to many different brands and design of speakers, I must say your design and the sound quality that comes out is something that I have been missing for the past few years. When I listen from one speaker to another speaker in the past few years, it seems that personally I feel that the hi-fi industry have come to a plateau when it comes to new sound and so on. And I must say that your speaker has a unique sound. Okay, now here you introduced the X3 in Munich, and I had the chance to listen to that. So can you tell us something about the new design on X3?
The X3 is a little bit different than the speakers we have been because we have changed the membrane material on that. So the X3 has sort of like a predecessor for the new generation of our speakers. A long time focus has been on noise. What is it that creates noise and what is it that makes speakers sound like speakers? And there are certain elements of distortion in speakers that you always seem to get, but the way measurements are done on speakers does not reveal that kind. See, the problem is that we listen in transients, but we measure steady state. That means we put a sine into a speaker and measure how much does that look like a sine, how much is the distortion. What we don't measure is what happens when we go from very quiet to very, very loud in a transient. And this is what we perceive. This is how our hearing quantifies what it is we're listening to, whether a sound is very subtle and very close or it's a stronger noise further away. That is the transient content of that. So our brain is trained to listen one way, and speakers we assess and measure in another way. And that is the reason I believe that development has been plateaued, because too many companies rely too much on measurements, which are a static picture and not a dynamic picture. And what we take into speaker designs is an understanding of the transient elements of how speaker drivers work. And this is why we focus so much on reduction of induction in speaker drivers. This is why we focus so much in how is it that the membrane behaves under a transient load, rather than just looking at a static sine wave-based measurement.
That's very interesting. I mean, for me, this is the first time I hear from a speaker designer talks about more than just measurements, which like you mentioned, it's a static picture of how the speaker perform, but more important is actually the dynamics behind it and so on. Now, what's next then after X3?
What's next? We also introduced an M1,
Right.
which has taken some of the elements of the X3. It has taken this type of membrane that has four different layers, and on top of that we add 7 more deposited layers on the membrane. So that is a membrane in itself that is very, very free of noise, and on that we have the silver-based non-iron or ironless magnet system, and a zirconium basket. Now, most people look at the basket on a speaker sort of like a placeholder. It holds the magnet in place and functions as a frame for the membrane, so these things are held in place. But all the energy that the membrane creates out in the room is also held in place by this structure behind. So on the M1 we have this topology optimized zirconium basket, which is, for me, it's a fully game changer in how much noise the frame creates. And the odd thing is that the tone of aluminium is something that is not really associated with music. Just ask yourself how many music instruments are actually made from aluminium. None. Because the tonality of that material is simply not very good. So if you can take it out, it's better. The problem is, what do you replace it with? So here we have made a basket that are 3D printed and topology optimized. That means that for the material we put in, we get maximum stiffness. And by doing the 3D printing, we also have the possibilities of leaving small cavities out where we fill it with the powder and not with the fused material. And that means that you have extremely high internal damping as well. So you create something that rings on purpose with the aluminium to something that doesn't ring, but is 10 times stiffer. And the clarity that brings to the performance is just unbelievable. You really have to hear the two versions next to each other to fully understand and appreciate what it is it does.
One of the characteristics of the design that lies in your speakers, there's a big focus on materials, and like you said just now, aluminium is something that we want to get rid of, and zirconium, titanium are some of the materials that you use in your speakers, right? How do you come to that conclusion that these are the material that will suit the speaker design?
When you walk around in this house, you see that it is a playground. So we listen to a lot of materials. And it seems like if you have a material you like to touch, titanium, zirconium are materials that if you get them in your hands, they stay there because they are nice to the touch. You have a familiar feeling with them. And it seems like every time you get a material like that, and then when we machine a dark or a set of darks, or we just take a sheet of it or whatever and put an amplifier on top of it and listen to it, it's very sympathetic to the music what comes out. It enhances your experience, and this is how this is the process where we find these materials. Of course, there's a little bit of science behind it. There's a little bit of how does things react under transient. There are good materials out there that are very hard to come by and very also kind of like impossible to work with because they're poisonous, they're radioactive, etc., etc. But there are other good materials out there. But these are the ones that we have access to and we have selected and we work with. The only problem with a material like zirconium is that it's a nuclear material because zirconium is used around nuclear fuel pellets, and because of that, it's an odd material to get to in terms of using it for hi-fi, because the proceedings and the procedures you need to go through to obtain the material are just horrendous.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I fully understand that, and that's why, to me, that's one of the unique thing about your speaker design. There's a lot of engineering behind it. And talking about the basket, I had a look yesterday, and I was very intrigued on how you actually come up with the holes and so on. But I was informed that it's more because of the airflow that you want. Is that correct?
There are many reasons. Stiffness, ringing, resonances are some of the design criteria. But the shape and the form is by topology optimizing, which is artificial intelligence. We are not capable of doing a design by hand that resembles and create that kind of performance. Right. So it's an optimum design, but it's done by big computers over weeks.
Okay, now that's what I wanted to really know, because it's a very unique design basket, which I will add the picture in this video later on. But I'm sure people would ask the same question when they see that basket. How do you come up with that? And now the answer is more towards, it's a software, I guess, behind it.
I think it's the same computers that do the wind tunnel testing on Formula One cars, etc., or do the if you look at the wishbones of a Formula One, I think all these topology optimizations is how can you create maximum strength, stiffness, maximum damping out of a certain amount of material. And then it leads to that. And the odd thing about these structures is that if you look at the roots of a tree, if you look at how the branches are of a tree, they're very similar to that. Okay. It's created in that mesh of a root net on a big tree, really.
Okay, good. Now, what do you expect, from X3 that I've personally heard it in Munich for the Malaysia market?
For the X3, I think that it is on Answers we always had the X cables, where it's a good step in with a very, very high performance for the cost. And I think the X3 will be absolutely the same. It will be a game changer in how much performance can you get for a certain amount of money. And this is really the reason why we have created the X series of speakers, is because we want to allow more normal people to have a step in where it's affordable, and where it's not only for people with extremely deep pockets to enjoy what we are creating.
That's really good to know. So when can we expect a pair of X3 to arrive in Malaysia?
Oh, the thing is that when you create something and you have control of every little detail of it, first you reach that level and then you start production. You cannot start production prior to that because then there are too many unknowns and you go into a very risky territory. But now things are started to roll in terms of production. And I have an expectancy that sometime in the fall, September, October, maybe November, we will be able to deliver in numbers.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, something personal to you, I want to ask. Can you describe your speakers in 3 words?
No, I can't. But of course, I can try if that's what you want. You want me to try
Yeah,
to. I think transparency is one thing, dynamics is another thing, and ability to disappear.
That's the one. That's the one. When my personal experience listening to your speakers, it's like the speakers are not there. It's just that room was full with music, and I was not focusing on the speakers itself.
But this is very much a result of what we talked about a little earlier about the noise. That typical driver systems with typical driver motor systems create noise. This is not a noise that is measurement in terms of distortion, but this is a dynamic noise.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to all speakers. But when you take it out, all of a sudden you have a sense that something is missing.
Yeah.
But it's the noise that's missing. So you get this clarity and this ability to speakers to fully disappear. It is more like the sensation of hearing music through headphones rather than listening to speakers, because the normal speaker sound is completely gone.
Okay, that's great to know. Now, just to wrap it up, any last words for the potential Borresen fans in Malaysia?
I think that what you should do is you should go down and visit the dealer and have a listen for yourself, because in the end, I can recommend everything, and so can my friends in Malaysia recommend anything. But in all, it's your personal choice what you select and you have standing at home. And I think that that every music lover is entitled to make their choices. But of course, we would like to be one of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. There you go. I totally agree with what Michael mentioned just now. I've heard it myself, the speakers back in Audio Perfectionist in KL. I've heard it in Munich, and I'm going to listen to them again today in Aalborg. My recommendation is the same. Go and listen, because I personally feel that this particular speaker gives out a completely different sound compared to many speakers that I've heard before. And it has a very unique character to it. So, yes, please have a chance. If you have a chance, go and visit Audio Perfectionist as well. They have the Borresen speakers there. And until the next video, thank you very much, Michael.